We're very happy to have with us today an extraordinary jazz bassist and also electric bassist, Ben Rubens. Ben's based in the New Jersey and New York area. He's had the opportunity to tour the world as a working jazz bass player. He's also an educator, teaching strings, all sorts of different string instruments like violin, viola, cello, bass. So we're very happy to have him. So Ben, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Abe.
Beautiful. Ben, the first thing I wanted to talk about, because I know you've toured a ton with some great people like Johnny O'Neill. You got a chance to tour the world with him, really. And, you're also an educator now, doing so much. I wanted to ask first, what are you most grateful about so far in your journey as a professional musician?
Good question. Just being I think I'm grateful for different things, but I'd say just being able to perform music and experience music in all kinds of settings for different people, and to get to stay in touch with your instrument in that way and connect with others in a way that otherwise I'm just not able to.
Right. Well, and that's the thing too, you're also improvising when you play this music. So it's very personal. Is there any time that, whether it's a certain performance or something where you felt like you were starting to find your voice as an improviser? Because obviously it takes years and years. When do you think it sort of all clicked for you?
I don't know when it all clicked, but I know that there's times that I'm able to express my ideas better than at other times. So like when I played at Smalls, maybe 6 weeks ago with Greg Abate, from great saxophonist who's toured around and from Rhode Island. Like the band was so good and everyone was so supportive that my ideas were able to come through better. And I also like that playing with James Austin Jr. and Jeremy Warren. Everyone's very clear, and that when it's a bass solo, like, they're supporting you. So I think that's what helps it click. I mean, so those are some of the times, but on the other hand, sometimes doesn't come through as well. So have to work on.
No, I mean, this is a journey that we're all on. I mean, and, like I said, you have to have your own voice when you're improvising. But you also have to have your own voice, when you teach this music too. So I wanted to ask you that, I know you've taught privately and you also teach in a public school setting. How do you think music education should evolve? I mean, if you had the control of it, because we only have so much control. So if you were to, for instance, add a curriculum to a college or something, what do you think is not there that should be there, whether it's jazz or just music in general? What do you want to see?
I just think you need to keep balancing and being open to what people who are studying are interested in, while balancing what's you also know is good for them. Like, sometimes there's classes that have existed for a long time that don't really pique people's interest, and it can harm their impression of the curriculum or of the subject in a way that discourages them from using it to like things and to like themselves. And I think that you need to balance it with the fundamentals and the essentials that you can be totally confident about will benefit that person, but also still trying to cater to their individual needs, which obviously is easier said than done. But I do think even at least having that in mind has been a good thing. And in my teaching, whenever that's been possible, such as people suggesting pieces that fit within certain criteria, there's a good blend of order and structure, but still freedom for them to choose. And it becomes usually a good result.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about teaching music, especially when it's one-on-one, it is really, everything is individualized because no one is the same. Everyone learns completely differently. Everyone has different interests. And I kind of feel like, let's say that we're told to, a parent of a child who is experiencing music lessons. Oh, every person I teach is an individual. Like the experience is unique for them, but they might look at it like, oh, that doesn't sound organized. But the fact of the matter is, everyone is, unique in that way.
Agreed. And just because they don't always see this structure doesn't mean it's not there.
Right. You kind of have to have faith in who's teaching them. And, you mentioned Smalls playing there, and I know you've had the opportunity to play at some great places. And I'm sure there's places that you played that were, they may have an undeserved reputation. It could be good, but it could also be bad. So are there any, venues or jazz clubs, or what do you think has sort of a undeserved reputation? Any particular place?
Well, I don't know about any jazz clubs, but I found that in general, public libraries have become a very good or deceptively good place to perform. And you don't grow up thinking, oh, yeah, I'm going to go play at the library, the place that you're supposed to be quiet at.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like that. But I found through a couple different bands in particular, that libraries are great sources of performances because, one, the people attending are purely people who choose to be there. They're not just hanging out there for another reason. They're not going for drinks or food. They're just purely there for what the library is presenting. Two, they're in a very focused setting, I guess because the library is also a place of study. Three, they have set time limits because the library has other programs, things go on. So you have 1 hour. I feel like it organizes all the participants. So I would say that's a place that's been undeserved. Like it could get more props. You'd be surprised so many random towns you never even heard of, but their libraries are putting on music, and it's positive. It's a good thing.
Yeah, it's funny you say like you almost feel like you can express yourself more playing this music in a library almost, right?
Yeah, which is odd, but like it's definitely proven to be a positive and a place that I'm happy to give recognition for. So many good people like organizing the libraries, putting on these series and getting grants.
Yeah, I also wanted to ask you too, because we're talking about performing in libraries, performing in jazz clubs, but overall it is performing. Are there things about yourself that only emerge when you're performing? Like there's that I can't get this anywhere else except playing music on stage.
Oh, definitely. I mean, first of all, what I like in jazz, in a lot of ways, is that it's always so you, like nobody's going to play those exact notes that way. Even if we're playing Misty for the 36th time this year, it still doesn't quite happen the same way. And I feel like I'm able to express other thoughts with music. Like I'm the same me now standing here as I am when I put the bass with me. But when I combine the separate bass to the separate me and we join, I'm able to get to different thoughts and express myself in different ways and connect in a way that I can't do otherwise. So without performance, that part of me is not activated or felt. And especially when it's really exciting and the other musicians are there with you and you're really giving yourself to the music and the audience is into it. Even with teaching, I mean, you can get to some of the same things, but it's not like that.
Well, I mean, if music didn't exist, let's say, I mean, I know this is kind of crazy to think about. How do you think you would express those, emotions or thoughts? How would you process your emotions, you think?
I don't know. It's hard to give a fair answer because it's inconceivable.
So it's almost like the improvisation is spiritual or transcendental in a way, right?
Well, Bob Cranshaw, one of the best, with top bassists of the Blue Note era, top bassist Pop, who I was lucky to spend time with over a 9-month, 12-month period in late 2013, 2014. He always said the music came through him. And I was still a college student and so analytic about trying to figure out what way do I need to be thinking of it? How can I let the notes come through me, but his was very much, I think, in a spiritual vein that is coming from somewhere else, and he was the vehicle. And so in that sense, sure, like that part of it was happening versus when he was reading and notes. It's a different thing.
So he's definitely an inspiration for you. I know who, like,
Inspiration.
yeah, who's a non-jazz musician that would inspire your playing that we would want to know?
Like they never play jazz, or they
Sure, never, no, not a jazz person at all.
not a jazz person at all. Just no jazz, because there's so many I love who also play jazz but are more famous for other.
Well, I'm super influenced by the Beatles, let's say, or influenced by Yes, the band, or
Okay.
Deep Purple, believe it or not. So
Big influences. I love Mozart. Mozart is not usually thought of as jazz, but I mean his music has many times given me extreme doses of positivity and inspiration and motivation when you study it, and you're just like, this guy was a legit.
no, that's beautiful. I wanted to also ask you that you work a lot. You're hired by so many people. I've hired you before because of word of mouth, and that's how we connected originally. What do you think it is about your playing that calls the other musicians to say, "I'm calling Ben for this gig"? What do you feel like you offer them?
Well, the other big teacher and more notable teacher I had is the master Harvie S, who's a master performer, virtuoso, and also as a teacher, because I can directly attribute me being asked back by people to what he taught me from the age of 16, which is the bass line's only as good as it makes the rest of the band sound. And that could sound kind of spiritual, but it's not really. It's very rooted in fact.
He's totally right. I think he's totally right.
Yeah, because you're not a bassist, and as a leader, if there's somebody you're playing with and it makes you do worse, why would you possibly have them back? So his thing was rooted in the roots of the chord and hearing the root motion and playing good time always. And he drilled that into me before I understood it at all. But immediately I had no gigs my first 6 months of college, but finally somebody called me to play in Central Park. And they called like 15 standards, and I knew some of them, but I'm not going to say I had a great sound or the great everything, but at least I was playing the roots and I stuck with it, and they could hear where they were in the song, and then they asked me back. So to me, that's a huge amount of what's had me be asked back, is just fulfilling the fundamental bass role consistently and like at least going for that.
Well, you want to do that, but you also want to take risks too as part of playing the music. I mean, we have to take risks. What's the biggest risk you think you've ever taken when you were playing?
Biggest risk I ever take while playing. I like the question. I mean, I've enjoyed the very limited times where I played with people and like it wasn't calling a song, it was just playing and pure listening. But I don't think that fits because everyone's doing the risk. I think I used to be more like heavily trying to follow Ron Carter in the way of playing alternative bass notes. I know I've played some controversial bass notes there at times, but I don't do it much. What's the other risks? Maybe just going into situations that I wasn't necessarily thought of. Like I think of myself more as a jazz person, but I played for a while in the Livingston Symphony, and I also did a ton of musical theater situations. So I took risks there and doing things I was less known for or had less professional experience.
Do you think that there's things about your playing that only other musicians will notice?
What do you mean?
So like maybe you might just have a certain, stylistic choice you might play that they like it's very in tune to just being, this jazz person might notice this the way I play or something versus.
versus like the public.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would think any professional would. Like, I'm not. You can't expect them to hear a Pat Martino influence unless they're really hip.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like one thing I really, I've always noticed about you is you're always willing to go the extra mile and keeping the two feel going as opposed to rushing into playing the 4/4 thing. So that's something I, as a musician, certainly appreciate. So I'm just wondering if you ever thought about that before.
Bob Cranshaw told me one time he came. This is how deep he was. He was already 80 years old. He came to Fat Cat. He was saying, "Oh, when am I going to hear you play, Ben?" And I'm like thinking, "Man, this is Bob Cranshaw. Like, why are you asking me?" But he came to Fat Cat, and I had a gig, and he watched the first set from right in the front of now a Cellar Dog, right in those seats. It was like 6 p.m. on a Friday night, so random. But he came in and played, and I played, and he told me, he was like, "Why are you rushing to get into 4/4 all the time?" It's like a jet or an airplane, and then two's like you're on the runway, and you're building up the tension, and like you can hold it. You don't have to let them immediately release. Like you're in control of it. You can wait a couple choruses.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I think that's beautiful. And you mentioned Bob Cranshaw, who played with so many people. Definitely a master. I'm just curious. Let's say you could go back to the 1960s, and it's Ben Rubens quartet or Ben Rubens trio. Who would you pick to be in the band that's no longer here with us?
And this is like a one night thing, a 1 week thing, one recording studio.
Well, just imagine you've got one night to go back in time and play a concert with anyone you want. Who do you think is going to be in the band? You're leading the band,
and I'm the leader, and they'll listen to me, like whatever I want to do.
Exactly.
Wow. I mean, I would. My first thought is towards drums. I would want to play with like a Billy Higgins or an Art Blakey, somebody with just an incredible groove and pocket, who just makes the bass so happy. And then like I want to play with like McCoy Tyner or Barry Harris or Tommy Flanagan or Hank Jones, somebody like that, just to be in the middle of the trio of them and just hear the incredible things coming out from both sides, where everyone's really supportive and wants to work well and is so tasteful, and you could get intense, but also.
No, I love it.
I would be a happy person. If I could get horns, then I would go from there.
Yeah, no, it sounds like, and that's the thing. You're such a positive person. You can tell you're feeling so, we're having this conversation, like, and as I ask you that question, there's like, you start smiling and stuff. I want, and obviously the music inspires us. Where do you draw inspiration from to play or practice or write that's completely unrelated to music?
Well, I mean, I do like studying certain. I don't study philosophy, but I just study one source of educational thought that's given me a lot of different thoughts about the art. That's helped me with the motivation, and it's not a purely musical thing, but it informs sometimes how I think and what I do. And I think that
do we know the name of it, or you want to kind of keep it low key?
People can message me and ask about it.
Sure.
I don't want to say it here, but there's nothing wrong with it. I like, so sometimes I'm not a big reader, but I like reading that stuff, and that inspires me. And it's not music per se,
right?
But I mean, I think it's just within a person. Like you can't be told as much as you're told. For example, as much as you're told to practice, like how much does that actually get you to practice or get your students? But like they have to want it themselves. Like
that's the one thing people. Yeah, people don't understand that they've got to want it themselves.
Totally. That's I don't know necessarily what source that is. It's an internal thing. How you're made, and like you could try. I mean, I know it's correct, and I was criticized by one of my more serious students a couple of years ago for not telling people to practice enough.
Yeah, I just, you could say it all. My mom used to say to me, the guitar is crying, but because I
Wait,
wasn't practicing.
oh, that's funny. I like that.
So, but no, I mean, but even so, it wasn't until, much later. And that's fine. That's just that's the journey that we go on. The last thing I wanted to ask you, before we wrap it up, um, aside from the emotional things that, we talked about, that music can only helps us process certain emotions, right?
Sure.
Gives us something else we can't get. The last thing I wanted to know, has music helped you influence, your understanding of human emotions and relationships with people? Yeah. But, relationships with others. Has music helped you in that way? Better understand people, you think?
Hmm. I think it's a good question. I would say so. One way is just the fact that uh, seemingly no matter what, everybody connects to music, no matter where you're from all over the world, and it's people connect to music viscerally, and they connect to it in their emotions. You could know 0% technically about music, and it doesn't matter. You're singing, dancing, smiling. Like Bob Cranshaw wants the person. He has funny like ways of phrasing it. He didn't phrase it like you need to play perfect metronomic time, the Lux and the metronome. He said, I wanted to feel so good that the lady in the back in the wheelchair would start getting up and dancing.
Yeah, I love it.
So,
No.
like, I think music definitely has shown me, through music, shown me how things from the world can connect to people's emotions. I also definitely think that when you can appreciate that whomever a composer is an actual real person, that like Duke Pearson, that was still like a real guy, and who knows what kind of idle moments he was having where he was chilling, but like that helps me understand how people process emotions and want to put it together through music. I don't know what emotion Joe Henderson was having when he thought of recording me, but I know that he was a guy who connected with his instrument. This thing came through him, and now other people have been attracted to those same set of notes and rhythms.
No, that's beautiful. Well, Ben, I mean, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. I hope we'll get a chance to do this again. And thanks for taking the time to speak with us.
No, thank you for doing this series. I think it's very valuable, and you get to, the more you, I think, from a listener's perspective and other musicians, to better learn what other people are thinking. They're not just how they're playing, but how they think about their playing and how they think about life and music. That's something I always value a lot. So it's an honor to be here, and keep the good work with the going down the positive rabbit holes.
Positive rabbit holes.